2 months, 5 days, 1 hour and 7 seconds. That's how long it took me to reach the decision to sell my car just to get a Komodo X.
How are you doing?
I had to do it, and in hindsight, was it worth it?
Yours.
Thank you.
Perfect, man.
Pleasure doing business.
Likewise.
I've been waiting for this day for so long. It's so beautiful. Oh my god. Oh, she's so
It's a
pretty.
red Komodo.
Oh, fuck.
Before the Komodo X, I used to own the OG Komodo, and that camera is an absolutely fantastic camera. However, the Komodo X sure is a different beast altogether. You paid thousands just for some extra pixels? Well, it wasn't quite some extra pixels, was it? You get 6K at 80 FPS, 2K at 240 FPS, CF Express Type B, which is magical, a V-lock mount, cleaner shadows, a higher dynamic range. It's just a better camera overall. CF Express Type B? Well, yeah, you know, CFast 2.0, they cost an arm and a leg. If you want a CFast 2.0 card in a 1 terabyte storage, you're gonna pay a kidney and maybe 2.
If you're just interested in the image quality of the Komodo X, then please have a look at 5 minutes and 53 seconds.
Pleasantries and intros aside, let's pick up the #1 thing that makes the Komodo X so absolutely fantastic. And that, my dear friends, is the global shutter. And I do realize you cannot see that it's a global shutter, but I guess you'll just have to take my word for it, or Red's word. Now, what is a global shutter more specifically? Well, if you imagine a camera sensor, the sensor reads from top to bottom in a sequence. The camera readout speed just tells you how long this takes. So let's say the A7S III or the Sony FX3, it's a very popular camera. Their top to bottom readout speed is around 9 milliseconds. The Red Komodo X, the Red Komodo, the Sony A9 III, I believe it is, and other global shutter cameras, they have an infinite readout speed because they just read the whole image at once.
If you would like a more in-depth look at what global shutter is, Captain Disillusion made a fantastic video where he explains in such great detail everything when it comes to shutter, global shutter, rolling shutter, whatever you need. Check out his channel, it's linked down below.
This has a lot of benefits. If, for example, you're using the camera handheld, you get a lot better image. If you're panning the image, you're not getting that skewed lines you would sometimes get with a rolling shutter camera. You get a lot less jelly if you have a lot of shake in the image. And overall, that just means you get a more technically perfect image.
You nightclub videographers are gonna know exactly what I'm talking about. Have you ever been at a club and realized that the strobing lights are absolutely killing your images? With the global shutter, you're not gonna have that problem, because the strobing lights, you're either gonna get a black frame or a white frame. You're not gonna get those half-off frames that we often end up getting if we use a rolling shutter or a normal flash photography camera.
And because of the aforementioned global shutter in this camera, and other cameras mind you, but this one particular because it's a cinema camera, you can actually also take photos with it and not just video. That is also in combination with the Red Code RAW, but nevertheless I did make a video about that, which you can check out here. The Red Komodo X does on paper sound like the perfect camera in so many different ways. But the problem is that you're just buying a brain. So you're not getting this package, okay? You're getting that small little box in the middle. And to complete this camera, you at least need a monitor, a battery, of course, a normal micro V-lock battery, and some supporting lens. But to actually rig it out and make it really usable, you probably need a big cinema lens to take advantage of the great sensor. You need a matte box to control the light that comes into it, top handle to make it more comfortable, a good monitor with an SDI input port. The cheapest ones go for 400 euros. You probably also need a follow focus system. I use the Tilta Nucleus Nano 2 for your very nice PL or EF whatever cinema lenses. Long story short, basically if you want to use this camera to its full potential, you're not stopping at 7K, you're probably gonna end up at 8K, 9K, even 10K to get the best accessories. So in its essence, it is quite the expensive camera, but you do get so much for it. And a side note is that I'm a huge camera nerd, so getting to build this one out and choosing my cage, choosing my top handle, what matte box do I want, for me it is so fun and I absolutely love doing it.
Now, if you would like a more in-depth look at my camera rig, have a look at this video. When talking about the pure image quality, the image is more or less the same as it was with the Komodo as it is now with the Komodo X. One of the bigger improvements is in the shadows. The Komodo X gains about a stop over the old Komodo. It doesn't sound like a lot, but honestly, the image always breaks down first in the shadows, so it does make a bigger difference than it sounds at first. With that said, even when you're underexposing or shooting into darker conditions, the noise does stay really pleasant. It has this fine, almost film-like grain, rather than turning into that ugly, blotchy mess you often get with other cameras. To put this into the real world, I feel comfortable using up to 4000 ISO with the camera. I can stretch it to 6400 depending on what's being shot and what the conditions are. And as always, the biggest point about RED cameras, the 16-bit RAW. After you finish shooting, you can push the image so far without having to fix it in camera. The old mantra, fix it in post, really does work when you're working with a RED camera. Overall, it really is the classic RED look. The skin tones might be a little bit too magenta sometimes, but honestly, I'd rather take that over them drifting into the greens, and with modern tools it takes literally 10 seconds to fix any skin tone issues. A final talking point when it comes to the image quality, the image isn't always going to be perfect. If you slap on a Rec 709 conversion or a LUT, it's not gonna be perfect straight out of camera. It's just gonna capture what you had at the scene. But again, you have all of the power in your hands when you're sitting at home editing in DaVinci or Final Cut or whatever you use. In other words, the power is in your hands.
This moves us nicely over to the great point about the Komodo X. It uses micro V-mounts. And don't let the name fool you, they're quite big batteries anyway. But compared to the older V-mount batteries, which were huge, these are quite small and compact, and honestly, all modern V-mounts you can get are probably in this size range. This is in stark comparison to the OG Komodos, which used Canon BP9 batteries, which, first of all, they were so expensive. Second of all, they didn't last all that long. The biggest ones were around 50 watt-hours, so even though the OG Komodo supports two of them side by side, the max you could get was 99 watt-hours, which when you're doing long shoots, you might want something like a 200 watt-hour battery. Luckily, the OG Komodo and this one features DC in, so you can use a 6-pin LEMO to power the camera, and then you just use a normal D-tap or whatever to power the camera. However, I barely never use it unless I'm putting it on a gimbal. I always just attach the battery directly to the camera. It's so much easier. The camera shoots at 6K, which is more than enough resolution, and that along with the Super 35 sensor enables you to use basically any lens that you want, which is fabulous.
The locking RF mount is a fantastic addition. A, it secures the lens, and B, if you're using a manual focus or if you're using a focus motor, it locks the lens so you do not get that image shift you could otherwise get if you have a bit of a loose mount.
The red raw codec and the color science of red is quite amazing. I absolutely love it and I wouldn't go for anything else. But there is one small caveat. If I want to shoot in 4K because I don't need a 6K resolution or anything like that, I do have an issue, and that is I have to crop in on the sensor. If I want to shoot in 2K and I get that 240 FPS, I have to crop in again, and then we're down to Super 16 territory. So the sensor readout does get quite small. There is the workaround of using a ProRes, and then you can get your 4K ProRes recording over the full frame. But you're not getting the higher FPS. So if you want a full sensor, the max FPS is 80. But when I do 4K, which crops in slightly on the sensor, I don't really notice an image quality difference. Alright, let's talk autofocus. And the autofocus of the RED Komodo X is nothing like you get from a normal mirrorless camera. You see it just keeps the focus on my eye. Quite amazing. If we did it with this one, it would just lose it entirely. The autofocus works when you're doing action sports or something with a lot of movement in the image. I know it sounds weird, but that's been my experience. I often use autofocus if I'm doing sports, if I'm filming mountain bikers, motocross, or cars. The autofocus just works. If I'm sitting down for an interview like this, I always use manual focus because the autofocus just starts hunting randomly after half an hour. So the autofocus isn't really reliable, but it is something you can use as a tool, but you have to experiment with it a little bit before I would start trusting it. So yeah, if proper autofocus is the most important thing for you, then you just get a Sony, you get a Canon, maybe a Nikon, a Panasonic if you feel suicidal, a Fujifilm if you hate yourself, but don't get a Red and rely on the autofocus. Let's get real for a moment and talk about color science. And that is something everyone loves to rave about. But truth of the matter is that as long as you can shoot in 422 10-bit 4K footage, all of the cameras are good enough. I'm sorry to tell you, but all of them are good enough. However, if you want to change the cameras in post, if you want to change the colors, if you want to manipulate them, that's honestly why most people get the Red, because you get the Red code RAW. It's a 16-bit RAW format, and no, it's not a fake RAW, it's a compressed RAW, but it is true and honest RAW format. So imagine you take a photo from your normal photo camera and you manipulate that image. You can manipulate that image an equal amount on the Red Komodo X. If you take the footage from a normal Sony mirrorless camera, you can do maybe 10% of that. Do you need more than those 10%? Probably not. But if you need them, if you want to change day to night, night to day, you're probably gonna want to use the Komodo X. And I hear you, I do hear you. I know your concerns about the storage space when you're filming in Red Core RAW. You're not wrong. If you film in full quality at HQ, you can fill up the memory card in this one, which is 512 gigabytes in 12 minutes. But it's not all bad. I never film in the HQ setting. I usually stick around low quality to extra low quality. And in extra low quality, you get around 2.5 hours of recording time. And if you're just filming something like this, a sit-down interview, it's totally fine. As long as you do not have too much movement in the image, you're gonna be totally fine using ELQ. If you have a little bit of movement, EQ. If you have a lot of movement, if you're filming mountain bikers, if you're filming action sports, you should probably use medium quality. If you ever do any VFX work, we're gonna send it off to a VFX house. All right, fine, use the high quality setting, but otherwise, there's no need for that ever. The menu on the camera is easy to read, it's easy to change settings, and you can actually set up a custom user page. I don't ever do that, honestly. I just stick with a stock page. It's what I know and it's perfect for me. But anything you need to change on the camera, the most important things are one click away. And even if it's the most obscure thing you have to change, like the highlight roll-off, it's 3 up to 4 clicks away. So it's not really that bad. And the menus are logically laid out. I'm looking at you, Canon. Let's talk about the deal breaker. And for some people, this thing is a positive thing, and for some people, it's a negative thing. The Red Komodo X does not have an IBIS. And an IBIS is an internal body image stabilizer. It's basically a set of motors, linear motors, that lets the sensor move around inside the camera body. So if you're walking or you're a bit shaky when you're doing your handheld stuff, it smoothens out the image. However, myself, I'm not a huge fan of IBIS because you get those corner wobbles, and I also usually strap my cameras to FPV drones. FPV drones, they pull a lot of G's to the corners and the IBIS just goes crazy. I've tried it many times, it never works. So for me, I don't want IBIS anyway. Maybe you do. But let me tell you, when you have rigged up a Red Komodo X, it's quite a heavy thing, and normally when you want stable handheld footage, the general tip is just add more weight to the camera. So this one right now is sitting around 3, maybe even 4 kilos. So I can get very stable footage up to 70mm of full frame equivalent focal length. As always, it's a give and take. If IBIS is super important to you, then I would recommend you pick up a Panasonic, and then you can take your 50mm nifty 50 lens, and you can honestly run with the camera and it looks stable. Panasonic is doing some mad magic work. I cannot replicate it. Another weak part in some people's eyes is the Super 35 sensor. You see, most full-frame cameras right now are normal mirrorless cameras. The Sony a7 IV, a7S III, FX3, Panasonic S2, Nikon C6, C7, whatever. They are all full-frame today. And that's great because you can get that full-frame look. But you are a bit limited in the lenses you can use. And while some people love to boast about the full-frame look, you can easily achieve that when you're using a camera with an RF lens, because you can put a speed booster on there. So when you're using a PL lens or an EF lens, you can get that full-frame look because you're compressing the image down to the sensor. Personally, I don't really care all that much about the full-frame look. I cannot really tell the difference, and honestly, I'm not all that into the really subtle depth of field anymore. I honestly prefer having more than just the eyes in focus when I'm doing my camera work. And as I mentioned before, the Super 35 sensor gives you cheaper, lighter, and more creative options when it comes to lenses. Let's talk about audio. Some people say that because it's a cinema camera, you're not expected to record audio to the camera. And I heavily disagree. If you have a full-on cinema camera, if you have an Alexa 35 or maybe an Alexa 65, you're expected to use this on a set with 100 people, then I can buy that argument. But today, a cinema camera is more like an advanced video camera in the hands of many people. And honestly, there's usually not enough budget to have a dedicated sound person on set. So having an audio import into the camera is for me very important. And this one excels at it because, okay, it uses a LEMO 9-pin, which isn't the most accessible option, but you do get the option of buying adapter cables. So you can adapt it to 3.5mm, so you can use a normal Rode Wireless Pro. You can also adapt it to XLR, and it can also feed out 48-volt phantom voltage. This means that you get a lot of options when it comes to your audio inputs, and the preamps inside the cameras are upgraded and is currently the best option that Red offers. The adapter cables aren't cheap for what they are, but if you get some off-brand options, you can get a XLR to 9-pin or a 3.5mm to 9-pin for around 50 bucks. If you get the Red branded ones, you're gonna pay a lot more than that, but honestly, there's no point. It's just a normal 9-pin LEMO connector to a normal XLR connector with some copper in between. Let's talk about the last thing about owning a Red, the Red factor.
Back in 2007, Red released their first camera. One of the first 4K capable digital cameras, and it was in every essence revolutionary. After that, you were quite a tough guy if you had a Red, and for a couple of years, it was really the thing people wanted. It was the dream camera for a lot of people.
Today, that isn't really the case. People honestly prefer the Alexa 35 or maybe one of the Sony Cine cameras, maybe the FX6, FX9 or maybe the Burano, over the Reds. However, they still do have their place, and some people do appreciate them more than others. Myself, I do work where people do not care what camera brand I have. It has helped me getting a couple of gigs. It hasn't been the main factor, but sometimes getting your foot into the door of a new opportunity, having a decent camera, can help with that. But that's not the reason why I bought the Komodo X, and it shouldn't be the reason you buy it. If you want to get a camera just to get more jobs because of the camera you have, the industry honestly is leaning more towards Sony nowadays than it is towards Red. But the golden standard, as always, is the Alexa 35, which you're gonna end up renting anyway. If you're at that level where you need an Alexa 35, go borrow some money from your mom if she has the means to it, or head over to the nearest rental house, or maybe splurge on it yourself. Is it a flex to use a Red? Kind of. Is it useful? Sometimes. Should you buy one because of it? Definitely not. So, the final verdict. After a year with the Red Komodo X, would I buy it again? Absolutely. There is no other camera I want right now, and unless you offered me a Alexa 35 for a clean trade, I wouldn't swap it for anything else. There are situations where I need reliable autofocus, so I did go and buy a Sony mirrorless camera just for that purpose. But other than that, for all of my jobs, I use the Red Komodo X. It follows me everywhere. I love this camera. I would marry it, but I believe it's not legal in the European Union to... No, that's not even funny. It is my dream camera, the Red Komodo X, and it fits me perfectly. It doesn't do everything perfectly well, but what I needed to do, it does absolutely amazing. In case you were wondering, I didn't sell my car to get this camera. Do you honestly think I own a car as a filmmaker? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little review. If you did, leave a like. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. I usually reply within an hour or so. I love you so much. Thank you. Goodbye.